December 5th to December 10th, 2010, Dr. Greg Foy and Dr. Keith Peterman attended the United Nations Climate Change Conference with two students from York College. Anthony Tomaine and Leah Block were chosen to represent the American Chemical Society through non-governmental organizational status. Their mission was to engage the students in climate change discussion not only at York College but throughout the United States. Their main outreach was through blogging space provided by Chemical and Engineering News. What do you expect Anthony and Leah to bring back from the conference?
Bring back information on climate change for everyone.
I'm hoping that Anthony and Leah are able to return to York College with a much greater understanding about climate change and how sustainability could help change the direction of how climate change is able to affect our environment.
Why they're developing these standards and really be able to see their thought process and why they're developed. Because otherwise all we see is what the policy is, but we don't really understand why it is, why it isn't stricter standards or more heavy-handed policy.
We'll engage the climate change discussion and be able to move forward in areas of mitigation. Basically, what do we do about it? So the whole purpose of this is really about students and about student engagement.
Who did Anthony and Leah talk to?
What should we know about climate change as students and how policy is made?
Climate change is going to affect the future of young people across the globe. There is a risk of uncontrollable change in the climate that may be very difficult for all of us to adapt to. The solution to these problems will have to depend largely on new technologies, and young people are more comfortable with new technologies than older ones, and they are the ones who are able to create the new technologies that will help us to survive this possibly catastrophic change that could come as a result of climate change.
Thank you.
Well, I would first urge the students in the US to send a very strong message to your president that despite the political setbacks he's had, in the long run he's got to act on climate, not just for the long-term interests of the American economy, but for the long-term global survival of people all over the world. And the other thing that the students have to reach out to the president and tell him is that, all said and done, they will stand by him against corporate and other vested interests. That's the message that the students have to give to the president. And right now that message probably is getting muted in all the other messages that the president gets.
I want to students in Pennsylvania know how important this multilateral process is in order to protect the earth. And you are young, and in 2050, all the negotiators here are maybe not living, but these people are deciding your future. Right. So I want you students really, really concerned about the future of your earth, and then take a lot of interest in this negotiation process, because what's happening here is really, really hard and difficult. I'm from Japan, and now Japan really does not want the very environmentally effective framework, which is Kyoto framework, anymore, because United States is not on board. So if United States come on board back into the multilateral process, that would really help the other countries move ahead. So I want the students in Pennsylvania really voice out loud to the government that we want to have a legal binding framework for our future.
What would you say to students?
Well, my message would be, this is your future more than my generation's or anybody else. This is the planet that you're going to be inheriting. And I would encourage students to be active on this issue, to engage in it, to learn about it, as millions of students around the world are, to communicate with your elected officials, whether it's a mayor, a city councilman, a governor, a member of Congress. Let them know that you expect them to take action, aggressive action on this issue, that it's your future at stake, and that you're going to be looking at what they do when you vote. Because when you turn 18, you can vote. And if more and more youth make this a voting issue, it will not go on by politicians.
Right. Thank you so much.
What did Anthony and Leah learn from the conference?
Well, at the conference, we learned a lot about new technologies and basically some new models to help predict what will happen in the future of the climate change in the world. So some of the new models predicted that there's an increased temperature rise, or even some might even predict less of a temperature rise than they originally thought. Other things we learned about were different types of renewable energy processes, which hydropower is one thing that everybody is kind of wanting to come into play in the energy of or to produce energy in the world, because it's efficient. It doesn't have many byproducts. Something like nuclear power it has pollution effects. So hydropower really doesn't. It takes the energy of the river or wherever it's located, and it turns it into energy. I guess another thing we learned is about policy and how hard it is to make a policy. If you think about it, there's over 400 congressmen in the United States, and it's hard enough making that policy, making policy with that many people. So there is one budget in the United States, whereas in the world, or at these United Nations meetings, there's 193 budgets, 193 nations, and 193 opinions on how to fix climate change. So that's one of the hardest things, and to get 193 individuals who are at this conference to agree and then relay it back to their nation, it takes a long time. So the process of policy is much different than many people would expect.
And it was very hard, as Anthony was saying, that it's very hard to come to an agreement, and they did come to more of an agreement this conference than they have in the past, but nothing yet has been put in place. But there was a lot of other, so many different groups involved. There were NGOs, which is non-government officials, and there was booths and hundreds of them. There was a big youth movement, and they were counting outside one of the conferences towards the end, and at the end of they didn't reach the final number they were counting to. They were counting all of the climate-related deaths in the past year, and they didn't have enough time to get to their goal. So there were police that was arresting them, and they had the sticks out.
So not only was the struggle of the youth protest something that we saw at the conference, but also a struggle with the policymakers themselves. Second to last day, we found out that Japan actually said that they were not going to continue the second part of the Kyoto Protocol, and they were not going to sign the Cancun agreements. That was a major thing because Japan's a major player in the Kyoto Protocol, and so when they said that they couldn't sign it, everybody was up in arms. There were protests about it. We interviewed a Japanese woman who was the head of the Japanese Wildlife Federation, the WWF, and she had a poster of one of their movies. It was a cartoon called Washed Away, and they changed the face of the guy that was the cartoon character, and they put on the Japanese president's face. And so that was a real stab at Japan and saying, how could you do that? We were so close. And to get to the last day and to hear, that president of COP16 is getting standing ovation and that Japan's going to sign these agreements, it's incredible, and it's an incredible feeling. I mean, you're sitting there, you get goosebumps and chills, because, if you can imagine 1,000 or plus people on their feet cheering for one person who brought everyone together in one room, it's incredible. And so as we move past Cancun and on to Durban, South Africa for COP17, it's my hope that the policy can be changed in such a manner that the temperature rise of the Earth does not exceed 2 degrees Celsius, and that is the goal of the policy. Although the United Nations Youth Group did want a 1.5 degrees Celsius change, which is what we saw in the protest, 2 degrees Celsius is a start, and I think that's what we should all shoot for.
My biggest concern is that a change isn't going to be implemented fast enough. Something needs to be done, now. Why? If it's not done soon enough, we're going to be fine, but the human race as a whole is going to be affected. We're going to die. We're not going to be able to live in these conditions, and that's serious.